registers. We know that you came with the presentation with the figures. We would like to hear more about this in detail. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to say that within this difficult period, 224 days of the heroic defense of Ukrainian armed forces, this period showed the great consolidation of Ukrainian society. And now that Ukraine is protecting itself and exercising some counteroffensive actions, with the huge international support, we have new victories on the humanitarian front that we defined as the key component, and it results to be one of the important parts of operations. A few days ago, we mentioned that Russian occupational forces did everything possible to dispose the Ukrainian language, to destroy the educational infrastructure in Ukraine, and supplant it with the offsprings of the Russian world. They didn't make it, and they're never gonna make it. The Secretariat of the Plenipotentiary that never stopped working, notwithstanding any tragic events in Ukraine. We received more than 2,500 complaints registered according to the law of on the national language in Ukraine. These statistics didn't change a lot compared to the last year, and it evidences the fact that the citizens of Ukraine are interested in the fact of non-existence of the rest of the offsprings of the Russian world. There is a lot of evidence when the citizens of Ukraine, they give preference to the Ukrainian language in both household situations and in public, and the statistics exceeded 80% some time ago, and it applies to both government bodies and the armed forces and just civil population. It's worth mentioning that we had 2 waves of implementation of the language law in Ukraine within the last year, and it explains the number of complaints in our address. The article took effect that defines the prevalence of the Ukrainian language in the mass media and the obligation of using the Ukrainian language in internet. It mentioned the user interfaces, it covered the application of Ukrainian languages on software products, and we see the dynamics on the first slide. We had 2,177 complaints processed. So some of them were in regard of the internet representations, almost 35%. About 10%, almost 18% about the visible advertising. Information websites, in fact 10%. The violation of the language law by the government representatives and the representatives of the education area, and healthcare about 3%. The major number of complaints in our address was from Kyiv, more than 27% solid quarter, and another from Kharkiv region and Odessa region. So these statistics became average within the last 4 months. There was a high activity in January and February this year, and then starting from July 16, when the Article 27 came into effect and the administrative code amendments came into effect too. In other regions we can see some number of complaints coming from, but still it's not as comparable to Kiev or Odessa. Some part of the territory of Ukraine was occupied, and we didn't get any complaints from there, and on the other hand we didn't have any capacities of reaction to this application. We have 626 complaints about services in the internet. What actions were taken to stabilize the situation and to enforce the compliance of companies and businesses with the language law? So within the 9 months of the last year, we started 137 actions of government control. It's way more than last year. It doesn't say that we had more violations, but we the thing is that the article that regulates the use of the Ukrainian language in internet came into effect. We had reaction to different complaints in a number of other areas, which led to the compliance of the businesses and companies, mostly working online, 58%, and the operation of the local governments, municipalities. So regarding in terms of visible advertisement, it was more than 37%. We suspended 33 cases of government control over the businesses and companies located on temporarily occupied territories in compliance with the information provided by the Ministry of Reintegration. Some of these efforts are still in effect to bring into the businesses and companies into the compliance, which result in the familiarization with statutes and laws of Ukraine. As to the information websites, the legality of their compliance came into effect on the 16th of July. The Secretariat of the Commissioner exercised the monitoring of 50 most popular Ukrainian websites, and we identified that 48 online media enterprises have the versions of their websites in Ukrainian language, with the exception of 2 resources called Bagnet. We were unable to identify who is behind this, who is the owner of this website and Holos UA, but there is no contact with the owner or the representative of the owner. Still, we have the mechanism to enforce the provision by them of the information in Ukrainian languages. For the violators of the Article 27, we exercised the measures in relation to those internet sites who do not have information provided in Ukrainian language at all. And we appeal to them to post a start page in Ukrainian language as set forth by the Article 27. The majority of the websites I mentioned who provide the start page in the Ukrainian language, they have all the materials in the Ukrainian versions, or at least versions of Ukrainian. For other internet resources, they still have space for improvement, and we will provide active assistance for the Ukrainian language to appear more and more on the web. As to the violation of the law by the government officials, we provided the monitoring recently, and we came to the conclusion that until the 16th of July, some of the government officials still used Russian language in their speeches or bilingual format. After July 16, we set the requirement for them to exercise their activity for the representatives of the government, for the speeches in Ukrainian languages. As of now, the situation complies with the law. The situation was stabilized, and these government officials got the most complaints, which were related to the violation of the language law by the officials of Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk regions, in particular in Kryvyi Rih. So the government officials' activities are brought into compliance with the language law lately. As we can see from the screenshot, the official channel of the Kharkiv Regional Administration, all the information is being provided in the Ukrainian language, thus complying with the language law. And there should be no ambiguous interpretation of this law, and I call for the mayors of the cities of the southeast that during the full-scale invasion the services provided to the Ukrainian citizens in Ukrainian language should not be an issue at all. At the same time, for the citizens of Ukraine who did not have an opportunity to master the Ukrainian language before that, where, for example, they were in the bilingual environment previously, they resided in the areas near the border of Ukraine, who currently became the temporary removed persons. I call for the government, their support and assistance in expanding the networks of free courses of the Ukrainian language for the Ukrainian citizens. I'm talking about the institutes, schools, other educational institutions, like maybe libraries, on basis of which we can establish such courses, providing the methodical materials, training books, equipment, and so on, so that such courses not only exist on paper but function in reality. We conducted a research with the State Service for Quality of Education, and we provided the results in this hall. The majority of the parents, they want to improve their knowledge of Ukrainian language, and it also applies to teachers, and it lies in the necessity to establish such training courses. The problem, the issue of this kind of a training force is dictated by the fact that there is not enough Ukrainian language in the environment, in the households, in the schools. So the establishment of such courses, they are translated into nationwide campaign of expanding of Ukrainian language, under which we cooperate with all the local government bodies to implement the system work aimed at the popularization of such activities. We gather and analyze the situation in this regard. I have to emphasize that according to the statistics, the number of such locations with free training courses is deployed within the territories on Ukraine. It depends more on the capabilities of the local governance. So out of 300 training platforms we opened in Ukraine, the most actively operated locations are in Lviv regions, almost 80. So it's Lviv region and Lviv directly. Thanks to our cooperation with Dnipro region and Dnipropetrovsk region, and with the governor of Kryvyi Rih, this Dnipro region is second by the number of these training courses platforms. Almost every library has conversation clubs or the training courses deployed in the region. You can see the detailed information about such training centers on our website. Master the language, you click there, and everybody can get the detailed information and sign up for the course, and also find the information on the level of training a person can obtain. Also, we keep gathering the facts of the violation of the language law or disposition of the Ukrainian language by the occupation regime. We collect the facts, and we transfer them, we hand them over to the enforcement agencies, and we hope that in process of the liberation of Ukrainian lands, we will find out more about the facts and of violation of the Ukrainian law, Ukrainian language law. And we also have a convenient form for submission of a complaint in our address, and this complaint can be supported with a picture or video file. We work with different activities which are possible thanks to our cooperation with the local governments, regional governments. Every region approved and established different programs for development of the Ukrainian language. I want to emphasize Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Kirovograd, Cherkasy region, Zaporizhia region, as well as Lviv region. Lviv region approved one of these programs 2 weeks ago, and also municipal programs, and regional community governments take part in this as well, and it gives us hope that such programs are going to extend further on. We are currently working on creation of the interactive map where we can track all the information with regard to the training violations and all the related issues. We can see the figures. We can see the figures, the numbers of the training platforms in each regions. We will be able to see the number of funds allocated for such programs, the number of training hours, and other information related to the popularization of Ukrainian language. Another task posed in front of us, and I am as the commissioner have to declare that we will impose sanctions on the violators of the language law, that the sanctions may result in penalties. We will continue to exercise monitoring of the language law compliance. We will keep collecting the facts of the linguicide, the limitation of the rights of the Ukrainian citizens in using the official language. And I took part in the Language Ombudsman Congress. Besides, we work on finalizing the process of approval of local programs, and I call for the regional governments, regional community government to expand and keep popularizing the Ukrainian language, and we hope it will be more and better. Thanks you for your attention. If anybody has any questions, I have a question talking about the internet media, the websites which violate the Ukrainian law, which will be the penalty for them or punishment. First of all, we have to define it as the internet resource, and not like a fake page. For example, those who were the speakers of the fifth column, that we have a number of sessions to be implemented, and the language law will give us more instruments and mechanisms to impede their activity. As to the violator websites, I mentioned already Bagnet and Holosier, we took effort in finding them, or we cannot detect them within the territory of Ukraine. We have enough tools, but we have to establish communication with them first. In case the communication will not be established, we will impose sanctions, like impose penalties of them, to close them, to stop their activity, or to bring their activity, we will require them to bring their activity in compliance with the language law of Ukraine. But it will be not related to the persecution of journalists. So just in case they come into compliance, we will work further with them. Ukrinform, Natalia Molchalova. You mentioned the facts of linguicide in the occupied territories. Could you mention the number of registered facts and how does it happen in fact? Does it happen in fact upon the liberation or before the liberation as well? This year and the previous year, we were gathering the information from the open sources, newspapers, internet, telegram channels, reports of the regional administration officials, from the vantage point of the enforcement agencies, or those who will give their consent to live promulgation of such information. We have communication with the national police, and we help them. They are interested in investigating the cases in which Ukrainian citizens suffered the violation of their rights to use the Ukrainian languages, or if a Ukrainian citizen becomes a witness of such case, the Ministry of Interior encourages them to cooperate, because we are not authorized to take part in this, the office, but we can cooperate with the enforcement agencies to use this information against Russia. We have evidences, video files, pictures. It relates with the activity of the occupational governance and television, radio broadcasts, so-called mobile zombification boxes. Another question?
Johannesburg, South Africa. Commissioner, can you tell us if the law has been challenged in a court of law in Ukraine to date, what the status of that is, and also presumably violators of the law have rights of appeal. Can the Commissioner speak about any of those cases? Thank you.
Дякую. Закон про забезпечення функціонування
The language law for use of the Ukrainian law as the national language, it did not envisage the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, and it's not sufficient at all in terms of punishment of the violators, like Russian violators of the Ukrainian language law. But we have large number of facts registered now, and this number will increase with the liberation of more territories. And another question from me: when Ukrainian government official appeals to the international public, for example, appealing to Russians in Russian and to English-speaking audience in English, does it violate the law? In fact, none of the citizens of Ukraine is prohibited from using any other language, including international events, scientific, political, economic events, any congresses, negotiations, briefings, signing of international agreements, if it's defined or it's dictated by the specificities of the events for having live broadcasts with the international public. But if such event is being translated to the Ukrainian public, the Ukrainian citizens should be provided with the translation into Ukrainian language, because none of the Ukrainian citizens is legally obliged to wield any other foreign language. In the view of interest of international bodies for foreign organizations to Ukraine, every representative of such international organization tries to talk to Ukrainians in Ukrainian. So I call our citizens to use the language that would be understandable to the partners, and the mass media who translate such a public appeal to assist in understanding of such information, translation into Ukrainian. And getting back to the number of complaints, almost 2,500, we see that almost half of them are from Kiev and Kharkiv. Why these regions? The activity of Kharkiv was extraordinarily high in January and February. We noticed that a large number of Kharkiv citizens, they started following the contests for government services and the mass media and the interviews with the government officials. And the statistics for January and February, it was a record comparing to the regions where no active battles took place. As to Kiev, the situation exists there, and it's dictated both by the existence of the situation in Kiev, but also by the reaction of citizens of Kiev to all the expressions of the violation of the law. It covers both internet resources and public areas, mass media, and so on. The activity of the citizens of Kiev is still pretty high. For example, we see that there's a huge number of internet trading platforms and internet shops, online shops, who sell different military equipment, but there are some of them who changed their start page to Ukrainian language, but in certain cases there is some specifics. For example, there is no administration to the website who can switch their start page to Ukrainian language. But the situation is still dynamically aimed at the implementation of the Ukrainian language law. We had Taras Kremin, the Commissioner for the Protection of Ukrainian Language. See you tomorrow.